Are we trending upwards? I mean, if you look at it in a long enough timeline, I would say that we are. I don't know what the immediate future is bringing, but it's going to be tumultuous. I know that.
Yeah, I see. My major concerns are pressure on resources. Pressure on resources means those who've already got them and come in the world with great assets
Hmm.
are proportionally even richer because they've got something that no one else can get hold of.
Right.
Think of land. And my book, Centuries of Change, really focused on land. Yes, we should be worried about energy, obviously. Yes, we should be worried about distribution of food around the world.
Hmm.
But the most important thing to worry about, as a European here especially, is land.
Hmm.
I mean, the density of the population, the density of settlement in England is comparable with that of India at the moment.
Really?
And it's reached that level. People, people per head, heads per square mile,
Hmm.
it's comparable. England is now comparable with India. There is not enough land, yet ownership patterns go back hundreds of years, so that vast amounts of England are owned by agricultural landowners, landed gentry, noblemen, noblewomen, who basically inherit vast amounts of land. Which, if anybody wants to get a house, they've got to earn enough and get a mortgage, and they get their little plot. And increasingly, people can't afford to do that.
Hmm.
And proportionately, those who inherit, 25,000 acres have never got to worry, and they're that much richer than somebody who's got to work even harder for their eighth of an acre or their 12th of an acre.
Hmm.
So, because we need land to live, to produce food for our infrastructure, and quite a lot of land can't be developed because, for whatever reason, it's a lake, it's a cliff face or whatever. There's less and less land to exploit. Therefore, there's more and more competition for that land. Prices for that land go up and up and up, meaning that somebody comes into this world with no land, with no assets, has to work all a bit harder just to get that little bit. Meanwhile, the value of the total, the landowner's portion, is going up more and more. Society is being wrenched apart by this pressure for resources. And land, to my mind, is the top one. Energy may well rival it before long. Recent experience being sanitary here. But these pressures mean that you've got to have somewhere to live. So these pressures mean that the people who come in the bottom aren't going to have the same values. They're not going to care whether they have the vote if they can't eat.
Hmm.
They are going to be like that chap in Brazil saying it's better that we have a military dictatorship than accept an alternative to the politics that can deliver us for us. And I am worried for the future because I think it's going to be just as bloody as the past. I think it's going to be just as divided as the past. I don't see any sign of the legendary The Last Man, where everybody, the end of history happens and nothing significant happens in the future because we've all worked out how to live in a peaceful liberal democracy respecting of law and order. I just don't see it happening. If it did happen, it would be like the hour hand of a clock that gets to the point of perfection and then moves on and we all fall apart again. And I do worry for the future that we are going to reenact all the mistakes of the past, except, of course, coming back to where we were talking about earlier, with the means to make disinformation worldwide instantaneous, with the means to destroy tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people if somebody wants to with nuclear warheads or biological warfare.
Right.
I mean, so we're looking at a breakdown of law and order, which this time round will make the 11th century look like a teddy bear's picnic.
What I see the problem is that people are too willingly selecting with algorithms that are designed to encourage them to do so. They're selecting biases and they're remaining in echo chambers and they're not allowing themselves to think critically. And if they can't see that there's a problem because their bubble won't let them out of it, then we won't even do the things we need to do to solve it. And so my answer is people have to learn to think more critically. I don't know how we get that to happen.
Well, education is going to be a big part of it.
Yes.
And education is, if we don't invest in education, I think any government, and this is true for I think all governments throughout the world,
Right.
the more you don't invest in education, the more you are basically signing your own death warrant.
Right.
Because you need the education for people to understand and make their case. So not only understand how they can take advantage of the law and use it to protect themselves and
Mm-hmm.
what their rights are and what the rights of other people are, but also so they can actually see how to benefit themselves and other people.
Mm-hmm.
If you start reacting to energy shortages or any sorts of resource source by saying, okay, we're just going to divide off you lot and you can go and, you know, piss off or whatever, and I'm just going to look after this part, you are creating the grounds in which the law is going to break down, and
Mm-hmm.
you're going to really, you know, you're on the, you know, the road that leads to not just civil war, but a breakdown of law and order. And you need to keep things strong, I think, through education to keep this framework. The question is, what do I learn from looking at 1,000 years of how we've held those in power to account? I do think it comes down to education. It comes down to making them listen. Why should a man in power listen to an uneducated man? Well, there are lots of reasons, but it's much easier to persuade the man in power to listen if the man speaking to him is educated.
Right.
So I think this stability in society, the not equality, because that's going too far, but the evenness of treatment across through society, the fairness, I suppose is a better way of putting it, of
Mm-hmm.
society is to be encouraged through the twin pillars of education and law.